Now we're going to begin with the webinar about the Cartagena Protocol. So first, I would like to introduce myself. I am Maria de Lourdes Torres. I study with plant molecular biology. Actually, currently I am a professor and a researcher at Universidad San Francisco de Quito, and I also helping as a regional advisor in the BCH project. First, I would like to that everybody gets familiar with the webinar page. As you can see here is your attendant control panel, which you have to use when you like to ask questions or write a message. And now, for sure, you are seeing my screen where I am going to show all the presentation. It's very important that you get familiar with this view. Here, please uncheck the option, this auto hide the control panel, in order that you can use your panel every time you need. Here in your control panel, it's important that you find the quick bar. This arrow is to show or hide the control panels, and for us it's very important that you can use that you can raise your hand every time you need. And also, if you need to write a question, please use this part of your panel. Write your question and send it to us, and then we will be able to answer your questions during this webinar. It's very important that you notice that this webinar will be recorded, and afterwards it will be published in an open domain as part of the BC educational materials. When you are participating in this webinar, we want that you understand that this webinar is recorded and that you are accepting this. The participants' opinions and concepts expressed during this webinar do not reflect the UNEP official position about any subject or matter. If required, official statements about any aspect related to the Cartagena Protocol should be requested from the only UNEP official representative, that is the Secretary to the Convention of Biological Diversity. This is very important for us that you notice this information. Okay, as you will see, there is a red light that indicates that the webinar is being recorded. If you don't want to be recorded, maintain your microphone muted and don't share your screen. Okay, coming to the webinar, you know this webinar is part of the BCH project, and this is the phase 2 of this project. And the overall objective of this project is to continue assisting eligible countries in strengthening national capacity to effectively access and use the BCH, promoting regional and sub-regional collaboration, networking, and exchange of experience for national and regional BCH management. The project has different components. For us, it's very important to stress right now component number 2, which is to continue in-depth fine-tuning and development of knowledge-sharing training packages on the BCH in 5 UN languages, which are Arabic, English, French, Russian, and Spanish. So during this project, several training materials has been developed, and that is what we want to share with us. Maybe some of you know about these materials, but you can find these materials in the virtual learning environment, which is, as you can see, the following address. You can access to this virtual learning environment. If you don't have, or if you haven't entered to this environment, you have to register. And please send an email to the address you are seeing in your screen, stating your name, surname, and country. Okay, just a little moment. I would like to share you how is this virtual. Okay, so if you go to the Moodle, you will find this in your screen. As you can notice, you need a username and a password. If you don't have a password, you can also log in as a guest until you got a password. When you go in the Moodle, in this learning environment, you will find display all these components, and if you go to this green box and if you click on it, you will access to all the training materials that has been developed during this project and that we want to share with you, and there are going to be special webinars to talk about them. So this is the virtual learning environment that we would like that you notice that there is such an environment and that you can use it. So going back to the webinar, and just a second. So let's begin with the main topic of this seminar, which is the Cartagena Protocol. Just a small comment about this webinar. After talking about a specific topic, I will ask if anybody of you have any questions. So in that way we can organize better your questions, and of course here we are sharing this webinar with the persons that work with this project and with the BCH, which are Ernesto Campo, Giovanni Ferraiolo, Ileana Lopez, Mohamed, which last name I cannot pronounce, sorry, Mohamed. So first of all, I would like that maybe if Giovanni and Ileana and Ernesto would like to say hello to the participants. So please, Giovanni, I'll give you the floor.
Good morning, everybody. This is Giovanni from Montreal. I think most of you know me already. I'm the person in charge of the Biosafety Clearinghouse and the Secretariat of the convention. And today in Montreal we have -19, so I hope you are in a warmer situation than me. Good morning.
Okay, thank you, Giovanni. Please, Ileana.
Thank you, Maria de Lourdes, and many thanks to all of you for your kind participation, and Maria for your introduction, and welcoming all participants to the webinar Introduction to the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. I am greeting you from Nairobi. My name is Ileana Lopez, and I am the project manager of the UNEP-GEF project for continued enhancement of building capacity for effective participation in the BCH. As you know, the objective of this BCH2 project is a capacity building activity to support countries meet their obligations under Article 20, referring as an acronym as BCH, of the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. We are very grateful of sharing with you today, and I wish you a fruitful session, a very nice session. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Ileana. Ernesto, please.
Thank you, Maria. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Ernesto Campo. I am in charge of developing the training material for the BCH project, and I welcome you in this webinar. I hope it is very useful for you, and we will be very lucky if you can send us your comments or ideas for improvement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ernesto. Mohamed, please, if you want to welcome all the participants.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Mohamed. I'm a regional specialist for Africa in the project, and I'm attending with you to also to learn how to practice the webinar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mohamed. Okay, so let us begin with the main topic of this webinar, which is the Cartagena Protocol. In this conference, we will see the background of the protocol, and which is the purpose of the Cartagena protocol and how does this protocol on biosafety work. Okay, first of all, I would like, because we're going to be talking about a living modified organism, just to give the definition that it is in the protocol of a living modified organism, which is any living organism that possesses a novel combination of genetic material obtained through the use of modern biotechnology. So although we will be explaining about the BCH afterwards, I would like just to show very quick, this is the main portal of biosafety clearinghouse mechanism, and if you go to finding information, you will can access in a very quick and easy way all the living modified organisms that have been registered in this portal. So as you can see, there are a lot of them, and you just have to go in one of these records, see the information, for example, about this maize. So in the biosafety clearinghouse, you can, as I say already, you can access to all these living modified organisms. So going back to the presentation, the origin of the protocol is the Convention of Biological Diversity. In Article 8, the text says, establish or maintain means to regulate, manage, or control the risk associated with the use and release of LMOs, that is, living modified organisms, resulting from biotechnology, which are likely to have adverse environmental impacts that could affect the conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity, taking also into account the risk to human health. So Article 8 of the Convention is stating the need for regulating LMOs. Also, in Article 19.3, the parties shall consider the need for a protocol setting out appropriate procedures, including, in particular, advance informed agreement in the field of the safe transfer, handling, and use of any LMO resulting from biotechnology that may have adverse effect on the conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity. So also in this article, it is stated the need for a protocol. So the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety is an international agreement concluded and adopted in the framework of the Convention on Biological Diversity. And this is the first point that's important to have clear. So some relevant data about the protocol. This protocol was adopted in January 2000. It entered into force on September 11, 2003. Up to January 2013, 164 parties are in this protocol. And the way that this protocol is administrated is having these meetings called the COP MOPs. And the COP MOPs nowadays takes place every 2 years. Last one in 2012, which was in Hyderabad, India. So the next will be in 2014. How does this protocol work? In general terms, the protocol, and this is also important that you have noticed this, set out general obligations and principles that are applicable to all LMOs. Second, it establishes specific rules and procedures that are applicable to the transboundary movement of specific categories of LMOs. And we are going to be talking about this important theme about transboundary movement. Third, it establishes institutional arrangements for the administration, oversight, and future evolution of the protocol, and make provision for capacity building and financial resources to assist developing countries and countries with economies in transition to implement the protocol. This activity, and actually the BCH project, is part of these capacity building activities. Okay, so going to the protocol, it's also important that the objective of this protocol is very clear, and it is stated in Article 1, which says, the objective of this protocol is to contribute to ensuring an adequate level of protection in the field of the safe transfer, handling, and use of living modified organisms resulting from the modern biotechnology that may have adverse effects on the conservation and biodiversity, taking also into account risks to human health and specifically focusing on transboundary movements. It's also important in an international treaty to know the scope of it. So, the scope of the Cartagena Protocol is written in Article 4, and it says, this protocol shall apply to transboundary movement, transit, handling, and use of all living modified organisms that may have adverse effects, as we already said, on the conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity, taking into account risks to human health. So maybe a small clarification, when we are talking about transboundary movement, we are talking about this movement when one LMO is leaving one country and is entering another country. Okay, mainly this protocol will be regulating two big subjects. The first one, LMOs for intentional introduction into the environment, and LMOs for direct use as food or feed or processing. So after this webinar, we would like that you recognize these two big chapters of the Cartagena Protocol and how this treaty is regulating LMOs for intentional introduction into the environment and the LMOs used as direct use as food or feed or processing. Also, it's important to know that this protocol should not apply to the transboundary movement of living modified organisms which are pharmaceuticals for humans that are addressed by other relevant international agreements or organizations. So these are, the protocol will not take care about them. Okay, so before entering to the first big chapter of the Cartagena Protocol, I would like to know if some of you of the participants have any questions. Please raise your hands, or if you can write a message if you have any questions. No? No questions? Okay, so we will go further. So as I say, one of the main chapters of the protocol is the one dealing with LMOs that will be introduced into the environment. And for this type of LMOs, the protocol is establishing the Advanced Informed Agreement. So the Advanced Informed Agreement, it is, you can see about this agreement in Article 7 and also in Articles 8 to 10 and 12. And this Advanced Informed Agreement procedure will apply prior to the first intentional transboundary movement of living modified organisms for intentional introduction into the environment of the party of import. So when we are dealing with LMOs that will enter the environment of the party of import, we will have to use this Advanced Informed Agreement procedure. Okay, the party of import, then using this procedure, will be notified about the proposed import. This country will receive full information about the LMO and its intended use. And there will be the access, the risk associated with the LMO, and to decide whether or not to allow the import. So this procedure will make the country that is doing this procedure take a decision to allow or not the import of a LMO. So here we can see a diagram about this procedure. So as you can see, first there is a notification from the exporter country to the import country. The import country has 90 days to acknowledge the reception of this notification. So in this time, the importer country will see if all the information that the exporter country sent is complete and if they can begin with this procedure. For this procedure, the country of import has 270 days to arrive to a decision, which is for the first time when the notification is sent to the country of import, then this period of time will begin, the 270 days. And after the reception of the acknowledged reception, the country of import has to begin doing risk analysis to see if they will approve or not the import. So, and a very important thing is that these 270 days can have some stops. That means that, for example, if the country of import is doing the risk analysis and after, I don't know, 100 days, they notice that they need extra information, this time will have a stop. So the country of import will ask for this new information to the country of export, and then I don't know how many times this will take, but until the country has the new information, these 270 days will have a stop. So that means that the 270 days can be more days if the extra information is needed. But after this period of time, the country has to take a decision about approving or prohibiting the import. There are some exceptions that this procedure do not apply. For example, this procedure will not apply to LMOs in transit. Also, it will not apply to LMOs destined for contained use in the party of import, and we will be talking, yes. Also, it will not take, this procedure will not apply to LMOs intended for direct use as food or feed or for processing. And also, it will not apply to LMOs excluded by COP/MOP decisions. Until now, there is no COP/MOP decisions excluding any LMOs for the procedure, but maybe in the future. So very important also to know when the procedure applies and also the exceptions. So this is the first big chapter, which is very important. So now I would also like to know if there is any question about this topic. Maybe if Giovanni wants to make any clarification about this procedure, to make any clarification, please, Giovanni.
Thank you, Maria. No, actually, I mean, the presentation was correct, and I just would like to hear from our participants that everything is okay. So I do not have any intervention, but I would still like to hear their voice if they are there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ernesto. So please, if any participants have any questions.
Maria, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, Ernesto, please.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that we see at the national workshops that people is asking continuously is about the contained use. in some places there just seems to be a little confusion about what is specifically container use, because in several places we have seen that people believes that field experiments are also container use. Is that true? Can you explain more about that?
Okay, actually the definition of contained use is when you are handling, in this case, a living modified organism, taking all the measures to avoid that these LMOs has contact with the environment. So if you are performing a field trial, this is not a contained use. If the LMOs is already in the environment, this is it is in the environment and it's not contained use. So when we are talking about contained use, we are talking about experiments that or procedures that we are taking place in a laboratory conditions when we can handle that the organisms do not get contact to the environment. So any field trial is not contained use. It's an open experiment, and it has to the protocol has to be applied. Okay, Ernesto.
Thank you very much. That was very clarifying. Thank you.
Okay. So if there's, I don't see any questions. So I will go and explain the second very important chapter of this protocol, which is the regulation about the LMOs that are intended for direct use as food or feed or for process. And this is regulated in Article 11, which refers to LMOs that may be subject to transboundary movement for direct use for food, feed, or processing. And it's very important to have very clear that these LMOs are not intended to be introduced into the environment. So in Article 11, it says a party that makes a final decision regarding domestic use, including placing on the market of an LMO that may be subject to transboundary movement for direct use as feed, food, or processing, shall, within 15 days of making that decision, inform the party through the BCH. So this is very important. The obligation that makes the protocol in this case is that a country make their own decision with their domestic laws, and after taking the decision, they will have to share this decision through the BCH after 15 days of making this decision. Each party, because they are going to apply their national laws, so each party should make available to the Biosafety Clearinghouse copies of any national laws, regulations, and guidelines applicable to the import of LMOs intended for direct use as food or feed or for processing if available. So this is very important to share also the regulations for making a decision in this field. And Article 11.6 is very important. In the absence of a domestic regulatory framework and in exercise of its domestic jurisdiction, a country can declare through the BCH that its decision prior to the first import of a living modified organism intended for direct use as food or feed or for processing will be taken according to the following. A risk assessment undertaken in accordance with Annex 3 of the protocol, and a decision made within a predictable time frame not exceeding the 270 days. So this is not an obligation of the protocol. This is a decision that makes the country in the absence of a domestic regulatory framework. So if there's no national regulation, the country can decide to make a risk assessment following what is stated in Annex 3 and making a decision after 270 days. So just to make a small clarification about the two procedures that we have been talking this morning. The first one, for LMOs intended to the introduction into the environment. As I explained, that is more a bilateral procedure. country of export, country of import, they share information, country of import take a decision, and of course this decision has to also be shared to the BCH. And the other one is for LMOs that will be used as food, feed, or for processing, and this is more a multilateral information exchange, because the country that will be using this LMO according to national laws or according following risk assessment, following what's stated in Annex 3, makes the decision about the use of this type of LMOs, and this decision will be put in the BCH after 15 days, and when it is uploaded in the BCH, of course, the other countries can know about this decision. So again, before talking about other topics, I would like to know if these two very important procedures stated in the Cartagena Protocol are clear to all participants. Please don't hesitate to make any type of question. So please. No? Okay, I don't see any question. So maybe
can I make a question?
At the end of the webinar, we can also. Please, please, Ernesto, go ahead.
Again, a common question from the national workshops about the difference between the AAA procedure and the LMO FFP procedure. So, you mean that if a country that is producing an LMO just has to, and this country is a party, the only thing that the country has to do is to publish in less than 15 days that the country has put in the market this LMO. Is that true?
Sorry, Ernesto, I couldn't hear you right. I mean, if the LMOs will be used as food, feed, or processing, the obligation under the Cartagena Protocol is that the country that make that decision to put an LMO for food, feed, or processing, this decision will have to, after taking the decision, the country has 15 days to share this information through the BCH.
Okay, thank you. Can we ask, please, Giovanni, to clarify what is the implication of this for the import country?
Sorry, Ernesto, can you repeat again the question?
Yeah, just to clarify the situation when a country delivers into the market an LMO for FFP, and this country just publishes it in the BCH according to the Cartagena Protocol, and that's all that the country has to do. What happens on the import side?
On the import side, let's say like this: once the LMO marketed for food feeder processing appear on the BCH, there is no other commitment, no other obligation that the country of export has to do. This means that this LMO for FFP may reach any country without further notice. And still it means that if a country wants to regulate this entry, it has to do that on the basis of the announcement that is done on the BCH. This is extremely important, why each country should monitor constantly the BCH to see which LMO have been approved for FFP and published on the BCH, because that is the only notice that you will receive that this LMO may reach your country. And therefore, if you wish to regulate, you have to act on that specific notice without any further notice reaching you. This is a very common misunderstanding in the protocol. Most of countries still think that for commercializing an LMO that is used for food feeder processing that may reach your country, the importer has to ask your permission. No, this is not true. The only thing that the exporter has to do is to place this notice on the BCH, and after that these LMO are free on the market and they can reach your country unless you regulate them. Is this clear?
Yeah. It's, thank you
Yes,
very much,
thank you very
Giovanni.
much. Okay, so thank you, Giovanni and Ernesto. So let's continue. There are other articles in the Cartagena Protocol that are important to notice about what they are stating. Article 12 is about the review of decision. A party of import may, at any time, in light of new scientific information, review and change a decision. And a party of export or a notifier may also request the party of import to review its decision if there is a change in circumstances or new information becomes available. So this is very important to know that there is a possibility of reviewing decisions in light of new scientific information. And this review can be can come from the party of import or from the party of export. Article 15 talks about risk assessment, and one of the objectives of the protocol is that this risk assessment should be carried out in a scientific sound manner in accordance with Annex 3. So if you review Annex 3, you will see there are different types of information required to perform a risk assessment. Another very important article is Article 17 that talks about unintentional transboundary movements. This is very important because it has to do with maybe some emergency activities. For example, here you can see there's a party that releases unintentionally an LMO, and there is a potentially affected party. If such a thing happens, there has to be a notification. The party that released the LMOs has to notify the potentially affected party about the quantities, the characteristics, the date of the release, the circumstances, and the possible risk of the release of a specific LMOs. After this notification, of course, there is a process that begins between the party that released the LMOs and the potentially affected party to determine appropriate responses, including emergency measures, also to establish agreed solutions and to develop a joint plans of action. So this is very important, and when such a things happen, of course, these unintentional transboundary movements has also has to be informed, and this information has to be on the BCH. So there's another obligation of the countries to put this information on the BCH. So when a party is, when a country is a part of a protocol of an international treaty, there are some obligations. So upon ratification and entry into force of the protocol in a country, each party must first designate one national focal point to be responsible on its behalf for liaison with the protocol secretary. B, to designate one national focal point for the BCH, and also a national focal point for unintentional transboundary movements. The names and addresses of these national focal points, and also for national authorities, has to be also, of course, notified to the secretariat to put them in the BCH. So I have just an example going back to the BCH, and here I just do an example finding information about the national and the national focal points and national competent authorities of Brazil. So if you use the BCH in a very easy way, you will find of the country you are looking for the national contacts, which are mainly national focal points for the protocol, for the BCH, for emergency events, and also national competent authorities. So as you can see here. Okay, so going back to the presentation, Remember also that these obligations are very important, that the country is aware of them. Other articles that are important to be named at this moment is Article 13, talking about simplified procedure. That means that, remember, the advanced informed agreement has to be done prior to the first import of an LMO. If the same LMOs will be imported for a second or a third time, you don't need to do again all the advanced informed procedure, but you have to go to a simplified procedure with the details of this procedure is described in Article 13. Article 18 is very important also because it talks about handling, transport, packaging, and identification of LMOs. And if you read this article, you will see that there are specific rules about the information that has to go with the shipments of LMOs depending on the use. So some information has to be available if the LMO is going to enter to the environment. Other information if the LMO is going to be used as food, feed, or processing. And other information if these LMOs are going to be used under contained use. So very important to review what is stated in Article 18. Also, Article 27 talks about liability and redress. This was a topic that was discussed broadly inside the protocol, and after all the discussions, now there is a supplementary protocol about liability and redress. This sub-protocol, this supplementary protocol, is now open to the countries to see if the countries will ratify it. So remember about liability and redress. In the moment, in the Cartagena protocol, there is a supplementary protocol establishing some regulations for liability and redress. Very important, of course, Article 20, which is establishing the BCH as part of the clearinghouse mechanism in order to facilitate the exchange of scientific, technical, environmental, and legal information on and experience with LMOs, and to assist parties to implement the protocol, taking into account the special needs of developing countries' parties. Very important. The Article 20 is establishing this BCH mainly to help the countries to implement in a better way the protocol for any country. Parties to the protocol have to make certain information available through the BCH, such as national laws and regulations, national contacts, country's decision, LMO's risk assessment, regional, bilateral, and multilateral agreements, and other types of information. And this is very important that every country is aware of this. If every country put all this information in the BCH will be a very important source of information that can be shared with all the countries. Okay, thank you. That was the information I would like to share with you during this webinar. And please, before ending the webinar, I will be very pleased to answer any questions that you have. So, is there any question? Yes. I don't see any questions, but maybe, I don't know, Ilyana, maybe you would like to add something to the webinar.
Please, I would like to ask if, could you kindly explain to countries what different procedure they should follow when there is a change in the national competence, in the BCH national focal point? Can you explain the difference? Because it's not as nominating a national authorized user. So could you please kindly approach this issue? Thank you so much.
Ileana, just a small clarification, the difference between a national user and a national competent authority?
No, BCH National Focal Point.
Yeah.
And National Competent Authority. How the difference is that a country should follow to nominate. This is country A, and they change the BCH National Focal Point, so what they should do.
Okay. Very important, the national focal points, which are the national focal point for the protocol, for the BCH, and for the emergency events, the country has to decide which is the institution of the person that will be the national focal point, and the information of this person or this institution has to be sent to the Secretariat. So this is an official nomination that an authority of the country has to send to the Secretariat, and the Secretariat receives this information, and then this information will be shown in the BCH. That about the national focal points. But when a country is nominating a national competent authority, then each country has, so to say, the power to designate any person or institution to be a national competent authority, and this information, the national focal point of the protocol, can put directly on the BCH. So national focal points have to go through the Secretariat in order to afterwards appear in the BCH, but a national competent authority, the national focal point of the protocol of a country, can put this information on the BCH. So Ileana, is that clear? Or
it's very clear, Maria. I really appreciate that, because sometimes this is confusing for countries, and you have given us a very good explanation. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Ileana. Any other question? Maybe Ernesto or Giovanni wants to also to say anything.
I have no further questions.
Do you have something?
No, thank you, Maria. Everything was clear, and thank you to the participants.
Okay, thank you, Giovanni. Ernesto?
No more questions. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the participants. We will be very happy if you could send us your comments or ideas for next webinars. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much to the participants to this webinar. Remember that this webinar was recorded and that you can access it through the Moodle, through the learning environment. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact Ernesto, Ileana, or myself, and we'll be very glad to answer any doubt you have about the Cartagena.
But more specifically, please, to Giovanni Ferraiolo at the CBD, because he's going to be the person that is going to guide us regarding the specific issues. And I really appreciate, Maria, all your kind explanations, and very clear. And thank you, and have a wonderful day, everybody.
Okay, so thank you to everybody. I would also like to thank Ernesto, Giovanni, Ileana, Mohammed for participating and assisting me in this webinar, and also thank you very much to the participants, and hope to share another webinar with you in the future. So have a nice day, and goodbye to everybody.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.